sorry. Willow loves to come in here and then just like claw at her bed.
Oh,
She
Willow.
literally always knows when I'm like on a call, when it's starting. I'm like, thanks, Willow. Like, that's great.
Hayes just snores.
Okay, let's start. All right. Thanks, Miss Jen, for joining Advise Her. So happy to have you here today. I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself and then give a little bit of background as to like how we know each other. But I know there's a lot involved there.
Oh, thank you, Phoebe. I am Jen Dad. Um, I live in Connecticut. I work in tech. I'm on the revenue enablement side, and I have a background in sales, a couple different types of roles. Um, I'm a new mom.
Hey,
And
Mom.
I know Phoebe from our first job. We moved out to San Francisco together, working at Thomson Reuters, and we lived together in our first apartment and our second apartment in San Francisco. And then, fun fact, our sisters also lived together as
Oh,
well.
yeah. I like forgot. Thanks for giving some of your background. I was excited to talk to you because I feel like between moving to San Francisco, first job, and then also you're a college athlete, and now you're a new mom, so there's different things to dive into. Oh, you have so many life events.
Oh.
But okay, so let's start with growing up in high school. So obviously, you're a college athlete in high school. You were like track and field and were a runner. Um, and actually, the other day at work, now I'm going off on a tangent, someone was talking about operational discipline and like how that helps them just like, be super successful. So, when did you start like getting into sports and track and field? And how do you think at a young age that kind of helped you shape that operational discipline? Because I know you have it.
From the time I was really young, I just had so much energy and I just constantly wanted to be running around and doing things that were very physical. My
Yeah.
put me in probably like every sport possible that you can think of. Like they
Mm.
put me in tennis, they put me in horseback riding, all over the board. And then eventually I found lacrosse, which I loved. And then my second love was track and field, which I eventually went to college for. I think it really helped me understand putting really hard work into something and seeing the results and putting really hard work into something specific like your form or something specific like the start or the end of your race and seeing those incremental results over time. I think it's helped a lot with work because something I really focus on is trying to prioritize my time. Like you can't do everything. And very similar in track and field and training. If you train too hard on too many things, you end up just having a slow race.
Mm.
That's definitely helped in my work. It's helped me prioritize really well, and it's helped me to do much better on the higher impact projects that I've worked on. And then in sales, the like higher revenue accounts. So I think it
Yeah.
absolutely helped with prioritization.
Okay. And then I feel like track and field, I always talk about this with like sales and stuff, is how it's an individual sport, but like a team sport at the same time. Like there's a lot of pressure on you because you have the team that's counting on you, and then you have like your own self that's counting on yourself. But like you have to put up a good time for your race, but it's so individual, like everyone can see your time.
Mhm.
So do you feel that helped at all in terms of like eventually you did go into sales, but being competitive in your individualness, but then also like helping the team and different things like that?
Definitely. I loved how it was individual and it allowed me to focus on being the best version of myself. I found so much happiness in that, but I found even more happiness, especially when I found girls later on in high school that we had a really successful relay. And that was the first time that I saw like team success in track and field as well. And that translated over to college where you had this massive team where you were competing against different colleges. That was really, really exciting. And I think it did definitely translate over to sales. In sales, you are trying to close as much as you possibly can, but also at the same time, like you want your team to do really well. I think some salespeople don't. I don't know if every salesperson has that mentality, but I know I found a lot of satisfaction in our team doing really well too. But I will say that one thing throughout my career and throughout track that was always really hard for me was focusing on myself and trying to just blur out the noise of, someone else at a different college at a really good race who posted a really good time earlier in the season, or someone else closing a really big deal. So I actually had a little post-it note on my computer that said, run your own race. And I would always try to look at it and remind myself that everything I'm doing is for a reason. And I would try to remind myself that in college as well, like you will peak and run your fastest race at the right time. You just have to trust your training. But to bring it all back, like individual sport definitely helped with sales, but also that team mentality also helped moving forward in sales.
Yeah. I feel like that post-it note is important because, I think it like Tinks
Yes.
brought it up where comparison is the thief of joy. Like I think about that all the time because I get stuck in my own ways where sometimes I see like other people doing really well and it's like it's not that I'm not doing well, but it's like okay, maybe I'm having a bad week and then like seeing that just on top of it is like you know, comparing everything. So,
And I think everyone does it.
oh yeah. I know I have to remind myself sometimes. But yeah, this is a good post-it note. Okay, so let's go to Bucknell, where I know you went to college. And so you ran track and field. Talk about your schedule in college.
Yeah. My schedule was packed at all
Yeah.
times. We had practice every single day, and if you didn't have practice, you were likely going to the field house anyway to get treatments done or to do something to help the team out. I double majored in college as well, so I always had a full class schedule. And then a
I
lot
didn't know
of,
you double majored. What were
yeah,
your majors?
international relations and Russian was actually a major.
Oh, Russian. I forgot.
I had an econ minor.
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah.
So
Busy
my
girl.
schedule was packed. And then during the day, you also had practice, which usually took like a good 2 to 3 hours from start to finish. And then a lot of weekends in the winter and spring, you'd either be traveling or you would have like a 3 day event of competitions because track meets as
Wow.
college are really long. There's more events than how many more people. So it was always packed. It was always very busy.
I feel like also, I mean, I know you have a passion for track and field, but at any point during college, you see other people on the weekends just going out and it being more casual. Were you ever just like, oh, I wish I could just do that and be a normal college student? Or were you always just like, I love this. This is what I want to do?
No, I loved it. I knew I
Yeah.
wanted to do that. And I thought it was actually like funny enough, like on a Saturday, if I would have a meet, you would sometimes do like a warm up outside. And so you would be in your Adidas sweatsuit, like getting ready for a race. And you'd be
Yeah.
surrounded by people with like red solo cups and out drinking and about, or, really tired from the night before. And I always felt like so proud
Yeah.
that
I
I was
mean,
doing
you should.
something I loved. But, at the way end, there was definitely like you're so fatigued from being that structured for that long. There was probably a couple moments at the end where I was like,
Yeah.
wow, it would be really nice to, sleep in or, go out with
Yeah.
my friends an extra night.
Well, like the emotional and like mental strength you need to do that in college is wild. Like the work ethic, it probably just like ingrained in you is always going to be there. We talk about comparison, right? If you're getting ready for a track meet and you see other kids literally right in front of you, like coming back from a party, yeah, it's like mental fortitude at its finest.
Definitely. It did weigh on me by the end. Just
Yeah.
really tired, like mentally very tired, but it was the best experience at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, so I forgot you majored in Russian or like Russian like international. Okay,
Yeah.
and then you studied abroad, right? Was
I
it
was in
Moscow?
St. Petersburg
Moscow.
for, I think it was 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had the double major, and
Yeah.
Russian double major came about because they offered Russian in high school a couple of my friends and I thought it was, really interesting. They've got, very unique history.
Yeah.
So when you got to Bucknell, you had to take at least one semester of a language, and I was able to apply and get to a higher level of the language just entering in. And I actually really enjoyed those classes. And with international relations, I had a couple of requirements as well. So getting the major just
Okay.
sort of happened, but the international relations was something that I would say that was like my main major, the major that I like
Okay.
and really enjoyed.
And this is kind of like off the path a little bit, but when you started applying for jobs out of Bucknell, did people ever ask you like, "Wait, what is this?" Like, do you know Russian? Was it a conversation starter? Because it is unique.
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. And I would say every single interview I had, like the first couple of years out of college, people would
Hmm.
always ask questions about that.
Yeah. That is kind of wild. I mean, it's smart, like thinking back too, because it's just so niche. So, okay, let's talk about your first job then. That's when we met, is at Thomson Reuters, our first job. When you were applying for jobs at a Bucknell, did Bucknell have like a program or did you use the alumni network or anything like that? Did you use alumni from track and field? Where were you getting help and different things like that?
For internships, I used folks on the track and field team
Hmm.
to help network, and a lot of their parents worked in business. And so I had an internship, for example, with insurance. And so, something business-esque, and a couple of other folks on the team had very similar internships, and actually a handful of people have been working there for over a decade. It's the company is called Chubb. They were acquired by Chubb actually while I was at my internship. But for
Oh, that's
internships,
fun.
I did more networking with people at Bucknell that I knew, and most of those people were on the track and field team. And then when I started to think about my first job, I knew I wanted it to be in business, and that is a really broad term.
Yeah.
See was that, my dad is successful. My dad is in business. I like the types of meetings that he's in that I can hear, and that's probably something I want to do. And so I would I worked with the career department at Bucknell to do a couple of those different types of surveys to understand more about my personality and my preferences. And what I sort of landed on there was I needed to do some sort of rotational program because I still couldn't figure out exactly what I wanted. So a lot of the jobs that I applied for out of college were rotational programs. And the job that I ended up landing was Thomson Reuters, which was a rotational program. And so what I wanted to get out of my first job was more clarity and direction on what I wanted to do moving forward because I still didn't feel confident that I knew right out of the gates, like this is going to be my career.
Yeah. I feel like that's hard in college though, like to understand what you want to do, but
It
that's
is.
it. Yeah.
And I think with Thomson Reuters, something that was so interesting to me was that it kind of combined my want to do business and my international relations background because Thomson
Mm,
Reuters, like Reuters News, when we were at Thomson Reuters, I helped out with a couple different small projects on the news offering, which for me sort of scratched that itch of what I really loved about my major.
yeah.
So I felt like it was a really, really good fit. A company that I felt like had the business side and that sort of international relations side, and I could try to figure out what I wanted to do moving forward.
Yeah. When you interviewed, how did you use being a college athlete? Like, did it casually come up in conversation or were you asked about it? And then how did you use that? Because, like, we talk about operational discipline. Like, if I talk to a college athlete, I know majority of them have that ingrained. So, how do you bring it up and use it to your benefit?
A lot of times I was asked about it. I would say it also
Hmm.
naturally came up when, someone asks about you. That was something
What
that
did you do in college?
so much of my time. And usually the things that I would talk about would be like the operational discipline piece, like the ruthless prioritization and the leadership.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
was a track and field captain for 2 of the years, and I felt like bringing that to the table was really valuable. And I'd say the last thing, especially, was at that point, like I was so fiercely competitive. And so depending
Yeah.
on the interview, I would bring that up as well.
Yeah. For anyone listening, Jen showed up to our interview in California in a sleeveless dress, and we all knew she was gonna get the job. Like, this girl's strong. She can beat us up, basically. So we should probably all go. The biceps and the bob.
Oh my goodness,
That
yeah.
was good.
Short hair.
Yeah, really short.
It was difficult to put in a ponytail.
I was literally just gonna say, how did you do that with track and field? Like putting it up in a ponytail.
A lot of bobby pins.
Wow.
I
I
had
mean,
fr-
that's discipline in itself.
I had friends that did braid and really put it together. It was a whole process.
It was a project. It's part of your like get ready process. I could
Yeah.
see that. You know how they say athletes, I put my left shoe on first and then I put my right shoe. You're like, I put in 100 bobby pins.
Had such a process and I had to eat the
Yeah.
same things. That is a that is a deep conversation.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so Thomson Reuters got the job. I also was thinking about this. Did you apply to Thomson Reuters? Were you looking to leave New York?
I think I was open to leaving New York.
Yeah.
I had visited San Francisco, I think twice before that. One of my really good friends in college was from the Bay Area, and I really liked it when I visited. So there was different locations for the rotational program, and I thought, why not? Like, should try
Yeah,
it out.
try something new. Okay, so when you started at Thomson Reuters, talk about like that transition, right? So I feel like for you is almost a double whammy where normally people leave college and then they start a new job and they're like, okay, what is the business world? But you're leaving college, you're no longer doing track and field, even though, you worked out and ran on your own. But talk about the transition and then how you tried to acclimate yourself and learn new things.
The transition out of being an athlete was really hard. I felt
Yeah.
like there was a big identity shift. For so long, I was the athlete girl, I was the track and field girl. And
Yeah.
then going into my first job, I felt like I lost that quite a bit. So that was a struggle, but I still had that like intensity and competitiveness. So I wanted to just learn as much as I possibly could so I could feel like I was good at something again. I feel like in my first job, it was a lot of just trying to absorb everything that was happening, like raise my hand for whatever I could and just learn, learn, learn. Um, I did remember in my first job, though, wanting a much fuller schedule again. I just feel like I was almost
Mm.
militant about my schedule in college because there was just so much to do. This was the first time, like even in high school, I had that as well. This was the first time that all of a sudden I didn't have that structured, intense
Like
schedule.
packed schedule almost.
Yes,
Yeah.
almost made me feel uneasy, which is interesting, where I feel like it should have probably made me feel the opposite.
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally get that because I feel even now with work, sometimes there's like slower periods, busier seasons, stuff like that. I feel like when I'm super busy and my schedule's packed, I'm almost more efficient with my time and my energy is higher because I'm just like go, 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 go. As opposed to when you have less, you're kind of just like, I don't know, like, should I be filling this time with something? Like, what am I?
Exactly. And I like being really busy. So I feel like the
Yeah.
way to keep myself really busy in that first job was just to try to like learn as much as I possibly could. Just try
Yeah.
to raise my hand, explore things, learn, see if there's any side projects I could do. So I really tried to do all of that.
Yeah. Do you miss, so obviously we were at Thomson Reuters pre-COVID. We were in a smaller office, it was regional. Do you miss that environment where, we sat up, were we on the 27th floor? And it's like, we were surrounded by leaders, people in like corp dev, business development, stuff like that, where it was just super cool to be in that smaller environment, but also everyone was kind of rooting for us to do well too.
Yes, I definitely
Yeah.
miss. That was so much fun,
Yeah.
especially the first year out of college, like our first experience. We got to learn so much just by being there and sitting at
Yeah.
their desks. There was a couple different folks. The two that really stuck out to me were Dave.
Yeah.
Took us under his wing and wanted to help in any way that he could and teach us whatever he could. And then Cassandra
Yeah.
was such a badass.
Badass. Yeah.
She was someone who had an absolutely packed schedule. She's a mom. She was just really awesome. So it was really
Yeah.
interesting to just even observe like how
Yeah.
people were, what types of meetings they were in, their personalities, everything, their lives outside of work,
I
everything.
know. I think about that all the time, how important it was, where they strategically placed us like next to people that like did different jobs, but some had been there a long time, some had only been there a few years. Like it was just so important just to like listen on their calls. Like when they were on a phone call, I was just, oh, what are they talking about? I think about that now with people who starting remote and stuff like it's probably so difficult to really just like get a grasp on things.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, that is tough. Those definitely were the good old days, but it definitely helped us, I think, like catapult into, okay, the first few weeks they gave us stuff and then they were like, okay, you guys seem ready to go. Here's your book, here are your clients. But yeah,
Yeah,
they did a great job, so
they
power
did.
to them.
They
So
did.
how long were you at Thomson Reuters for?
A little over a year.
At what point, like, did you realize you wanted to switch?
I, like, speaking of being in person and on an open floor,
Yeah,
I remember hearing the sales side, which was a little bit further away, but of course, you can hear everything being on that floor.
yeah,
I remember hearing more of those net new business conversations and thinking to myself, wow, that seems really challenging, really hard. I think that would scratch my competitive itch. And being in San Francisco, we were around all of these big tech companies. So I started to get curious and I just put a couple applications out there and I started to go through the interview process and found that it was something that I was truly interested in. And I was, a couple rounds in with LinkedIn. And then once they gave me the offer, I thought I should just try it. Like it seemed
yeah.
interesting. It is something that I'm trying to follow my gut on. And like my first job, like I said, I wanted to figure out what that next path was forward. And at the time, that felt like that was it.
I feel like you right there did not give yourself enough credit. I just threw some applications out there. You were so strategic and like you used your network. I remember like back in those days when we lived together in North Beach and Nob Hill, it was always amazing to see you just like understand what you had to do to get what you wanted. And you would start super early. You were strategic about it. You were like, okay, I need to get in touch with this person. I need to talk to this person, like go get coffee with this person. Like you went to all ends to like, get it done. I feel like when you set your sights on something, you're like, this is what I want. So,
Yes.
yes. Okay, did you have conversations to try and figure out more like what you wanted to do?
So across the floor, there was someone who was an AE, and that's what really interested me. And so that's when I started to do research and figure out how do I become an AE? Is that something I can do at Thomson Reuters? If so, what are the steps to get there? Because he was a bit more senior in his career. And I found from doing research, you need to be some sort of sales development rep or business development rep for the most part before coming an AE. That wasn't available to us at Thomson Reuters at the branch that we were at the time. And so that's when I started to explore more. So I started to reach out to Bucknell alum, like friends of friends, especially I mentioned that one friend who was from San Francisco. She had some friends that were living in SF and working in tech. And so I
Yeah.
did actually meet with a couple people. I remember meeting with someone at Salesforce for coffee and understanding what do the different business units look like? What does it look like to become an AE? What are the roles to get there? What is the process like? And so I started to really build up all that information. And I think I put it all in a Google Doc to try to figure
Yeah.
out what I wanted to do. For Salesforce, I applied through a referral. For LinkedIn, I didn't know anyone at LinkedIn, and so I just applied for that one. But I had done my research on what the role entailed. Those were the ones initially when I started applying that I thought I really wanted to work at because I liked the mission and vision. And I really liked at both companies how there was an element of giving back to the community and really big ERG focuses. And so those were the first two companies that I said I really want to try to work at one of those, and I can keep exploring if not. But I was pretty set on becoming an SDR.
It is so wild. So, since our first job was Thomson Reuters and it's in the finance world, how the structure of our sales org is so different from tech sales. Like, once we came out to San Francisco, it's like SDR, BDR, AE, and we're like, what are all these terms? But
Yeah.
then once you're in that world, you're like, okay, that's the structure at every tech company.
Yes.
But I mean, you figured it out like super early on. You just got it where you're like, okay, this is the entry level, like to get into that sales path that I want to do. Because I know for me, I was just like, what are these terms? And then when you started working at LinkedIn and talking about it more, I put it together. I was like, oh, okay, everyone says these things. So we were the anomaly, which
Yes,
is
and I think
crazy.
we learned so much sitting around people that were so senior, and it wasn't the
Yeah.
traditional like tech company, but we were also an SF where everyone around us, it felt like at the time,
Yeah.
was in some sort of role like that. So learning about those worlds and then finally being at LinkedIn, it all started to click a little bit more.
Yeah. And so I feel like when you went to LinkedIn and you were SDR, I feel like it was tough. Being an SDR is super tough. Your quota, it was it monthly quota
Mm.
or did
It
you
was
have monthly targets? I just remember like it was super stressful.
yes, there was monthly
Yeah.
targets and quarterly quota.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a grind, that job.
Yeah.
But you learn so much. You learn how to put yourself out there. You learn how to just rip the band-aid and talk to customers. You learn how to overcome awkward conversations. And it's also a fail fast sort of job. So if you find something doesn't work, you can get right back on the phone and try something different. So it was a really good learning experience. And I also think for just how competitive I was and wanting to have that, feeling of competing against other people again. It was
Mm,
perfect for that. But that also comes with its extremes. Like it was really hard to shut off, but it was the perfect time in my life to do that.
yeah, for sure. Like you still had that drive. I mean, you have it today, but it was probably like so strong back then too. And then, I mean, you're talking about your schedule, right? At Thomson Reuters, where you're like there was time to fill. Did you feel like once you were an SDR, it was more packed and more structured?
Yes, I felt like it was more packed, more structured, and the work was never done. You could always force more ops, you could always reach out to more companies, and you could always do more cold calls. And I
Yeah.
think at LinkedIn too, something I really liked was that it was a big company that had a really structured learning program. So there was always different opportunities to continue to develop and upskill. And I also filled some of my time starting to attend ERG events and get myself involved in the
Yeah.
ERG over there.
You were pretty involved in Women at LinkedIn. Was that it? Okay.
Yeah. And I got introduced to it, I would say in my first 2 weeks or so being at LinkedIn. I attended an event to try to meet some people. And
Hmm.
that eventually turned into me being a regional lead of Women at LinkedIn. Later on in New York, I took a bigger leadership role, but I was also involved in San Francisco with a lot of planning, execution, events, and it was great. It's very helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned back in New York. So you moved from San Francisco back to New York. Talk about like how long you were in San Francisco, and then when you realized you wanted to move back to New York, how'd you make that happen?
I was in San Francisco for 3 years, and then about 2 years in, I started to have the feeling that I wanted something new. And I knew eventually I'd want to move back to New York. My whole family is from the East Coast, and I always had it set in my mind that I wanted a couple years in Manhattan.
Mm,
And the New York AE team was doing really well. And I had introduced myself to the manager over there. And so that was the first step, like making it known to my manager in SF that I did want to move to New York at some point, but giving him enough leeway. Because it took about a year, the point that I outwardly expressed that I wanted to move to actually moving. And so I first expressed that want to him. I was then introduced to that manager. I was then started networking with that team and then started to like keep my ear ears open at all times to see if there was going to be a role open. And when there was, I already knew the manager really well. It just made sense. So it wasn't a super formal interview process to get moved on to that team.
No, that's good advice because I feel like a move, especially between two major cities in your head might seem simple, but at the same time, it definitely takes a lot of time. Even from what I've seen at my own job with people transferring, it's like, headcount has to open up,
Yep.
or like someone has to move off the team, and then there still has to be headcount, and then there technically has to be like formal interview process. But as you said, if you told the manager months before, they already have you in the back of your mind, of their mind, and like obviously you were good at your job, so it's like okay, if you keep it up, you can show that you can just hit the ground running, which is super nice.
Definitely. And I think my manager really appreciated that as well, because I'm sure as a manager,
Um,
sort of that panic moment when you hear that one of your individual contributors wants to not be on the team. Uh,
yeah,
so it gives them time to plan. It gives them time to also do networking for who is going to fill my position. So being really clear about that sooner rather than later was very helpful because like you said, it's almost like getting an entirely new job when you're just simply moving locations for the same exact type of role. But it's
yeah. Like, can't we just do a simple just transfer over? It's like,
never
it's
that easy.
not as simple as it seems. Oh, I want to do one plug. So you worked at LinkedIn. Obviously, you have a great LinkedIn presence.
Thank
So
you.
if someone came to you either in college or like in an entry level position a few years into work and they're like, I want to spruce up my LinkedIn, what are two or three pieces of advice?
I'd say three things. One, I think a high quality photo and backdrop is very helpful when recruiters are looking at your LinkedIn profile. It's the first thing they see. It would be underneath your experiences, quantify anything you can. Just try to quantify the impact that you made in that internship, in that job, having a couple bullet points, but having them be as closely aligned to quantifiable impact as you can. And then I'd say the last thing that I experienced was in the summary section. I put a quote that I really love from famous runner Steve Prefontaine.
Ah, wait, what is the quote again?
To give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. And I love that quote. And so many recruiters and so many people brought it up. I think
Oh,
just having
interesting.
like something in there that's unique
Yeah.
really catch people's attention. And it seems, so simple and almost kind of dumb to do that. But I did find that a lot of people brought it up. And even to this day, when recruiters reach out,
Yeah.
bring that up quite a bit.
It's a really good advice because I feel like even if, let's say, someone that's in college or someone at a different company wanted to network with you and just reach out and be like, hey, looking for a mentor or something like that, the more things you have on your profile that are not work related, a little bit different, could be personal, could just be your interest, at least it gives them something to be like, hey, I saw this and I relate to it. It'll catch your attention too. So I think that's important.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be, something sports related. It could be any extracurricular activity that you're passionate about or
Yeah.
anything in general that you're passionate about. Find a way to pull that in because that really humanizes you. LinkedIn is a way to take your resume and humanize it. So, like, take advantage of those features.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so then I know we are almost up. So from LinkedIn,
Mhm.
you went to Gong and then now you are at GitHub.
Yeah.
So what I know about those transitions as well is that you knew you wanted to get out of sales and into like enablement, program management, different things like that. So can you talk about your journey moving from LinkedIn to Gong and then now to GitHub as well? But at
Mhm.
what point did you make also that role transition into something different?
So, maybe first I'll talk about the transition from company to company.
Hmm.
I moved over to Gong when I felt like I was drawn to a smaller company that I could be a little bit more creative and could figure out new processes. At LinkedIn, something that was amazing about LinkedIn was that there were such structured processes and opportunities to learn.
Hmm.
At a certain point, I started to get that itch of Like I wanted something different. And I thought one of our roommates at the time worked at a startup. And I thought it was so interesting the way that she talked about sales because it felt so different than what I was doing. And so I was really interested to try that. And Gong was a tool that we had access to at LinkedIn that I felt like helped me
Um,
ton. Listening to calls from other folks in different offices just helped me up level myself. And I was really confident in that tool. So I went over to Gong to sell that tool. And that selling experience was so different than LinkedIn. And it was really challenging, really hard. Things were constantly changing. But I would say did I did better at Gong than I did at LinkedIn, even though I felt like it was a lot more challenging. I learned a lot about myself during that job as well. And one of the things that I learned from both LinkedIn and Gong was although I really enjoyed sales, the parts of my day that I really, really enjoyed were helping my team to succeed, helping a large group to learn something. So, Women at LinkedIn, every time I had a Women at LinkedIn meeting, I enjoyed it so much. I came out of it feeling so happy. Whenever I created a new deck, I was always the deck person. When I created a new deck and could scale that across our team, I felt really proud of that. And at one point when I was at LinkedIn, I created a deck that was persona based. I wanted, funny enough, to find a new way to demo because I didn't think my demos were landing when I listened back to my Gong calls. I created this persona based deck and my manager said, that's something that the enablement team does. You should connect with them. We ended up scaling that deck out. It was me, enablement, and the product marketing team to our entire EMEA sales team to use. And I found that project so exciting. And so when I moved over to Gong, I was still enjoying sales, but I knew in the back of my head that was also something I was interested in. And so what I started to do was plant the seed. And a couple months into being at Gong, I introduced myself to the head of enablement, who I'm still very close friends with today. Told her, I'm really interested in enablement and learning more about what you do and your team does. So if there's anything I can do to help you, please call on me. If you need someone to present, if you need someone to bounce ideas off of, if you need someone to help build a deck, I'm here. About a year and a half or so of being at Gong, I made the transition to enablement. And so enablement was much more project based. It was much more strategic and it was really interesting to me. I loved it. I loved the types of meetings I was in. I loved being in meetings all of a sudden with our CRO, our president, and all of these folks from product. I was in these meetings that were bringing me a lot of joy and I was learning a lot about what the company did. And I think in the role as well, something I didn't really realize was I first pictured enablement as making decks, doing presentations, helping people to be better at their jobs. But what I think I really enjoy about enablement now is that it's such a strategic function. You have these business reviews with rev ops and sales ops, and you look at opportunities in the business. Like, for example, at Gong, we weren't, our renewal numbers were going down. And so I'm working with the sales leader to understand what can we do to get those numbers up. Let's come up with a hypothesis. Executive business reviews. If we implement executive business reviews, going to help our renewal number? Yes. Well, when? And then we'll start to look at the data like was it 90 days, 120 days, 60 days? So it's really creative and you get to test out things and then see the revenue impact. And
yeah.
a lot of it is behind the scenes, but in front of everyone it's, training and it's creating presenting things. And I really enjoyed that at Gong. It was always creating something new because the business was moving so quickly. And then, similar to what I had in sales, I had the opportunity to work at a big company and then a smaller company. And I felt like they were two totally different jobs. And so, with enablement, I wanted to have that opportunity too to go from a smaller company and then learn what is it like at a bigger company. And so I transitioned from Gong to GitHub. And so I went back to another company that was owned by Microsoft. And part of that decision too was I really wanted very strong benefits because I was hoping to have a family soon. So that was a small part of the decision as well.
I feel like I remember when you went through that process at LinkedIn when you had that deck and you were working with a team because I think I remember you talking about it and being super excited and being like, this is different, but you were super interested in it and you liked what it was. Um, I think it goes back almost to what we were talking about earlier with track and field, where like that's almost more of a team mentality. Like you're really helping the sales team. If you made a deck and you're like, this works, and then let's help everyone else out and give them the same deck, but you did it in like the best way possible, where you're like, okay, well, I'll work with the team that does that too. That's super cool. So, and then also when you said at Gong, when you reached out to the enablement person and were just like, hey, if you need any help, I'm here to help, because obviously they need feedback like from the field and whatnot. And yeah, it still took some time to ultimately like get to that side of things to the enablement team, but I feel like that's a great way to approach it where it's super casual,
Yeah,
but you're offering your time and your expertise and you know they kind of need that in their
definitely.
role too. So it's huge.
Definitely. And you're both getting value from that relationship. They're
Yeah.
getting value from additional work that you're willing to put in, and you're getting value being exposed to something and
Yeah.
seeing if you do truly like it. So there's no harm in networking and there's no harm in expressing what you're interested in.
Yeah. And then going back to what you said about larger company, startup, larger company. So LinkedIn and GitHub both backed by Microsoft. Do you like it though, in the sense where it's like a smaller subset within the larger company? Does that feel kind of like a startup in your world, or you're like it's totally different?
Totally different.
Really? That's so funny.
Yeah, totally, totally different. In my opinion, at
Yeah.
least. You have the ability and the liberty to build things and be so creative and make things out of nothing at startups. And while I'm sure at Microsoft that would be so different, like wildly different. For me, even being at GitHub, that's so different because when you create something, it needs to be validated with so many different people, so many different teams to get to a point where you can actually introduce it to the sellers that you support. So it's just a much longer, more thorough process. And both are really interesting. But even being a subset of Microsoft,
Yeah.
it's so crazy different.
That is kind of wild. I didn't even think about that, where it's like levels of approval, like different things along those lines.
And for me, I loved being at a startup similar to why I liked being an SDR. It was like fail fast, try things and fail fast and just try to figure out what works. If you're in a startup and you're in a role that you enjoy and people trust you, like you will probably have the ability to try something out and
Yeah.
wildly successful, or it can fail and you try the next thing. So I think that is a lot of fun to do at some point. Some people don't like it, but I really liked it a lot.
No, I think that's good advice, especially like being in the Bay Area right now and all these startups, popping off and stuff. Like they're doing cool things. Okay, last but not least, I know we brought it up in the beginning, but you're a new mom. So how old is James?
He's 9 months as of yesterday.
9 months. Oh my God, he's almost a year. Um, I can't even say it. But so when did you come off of mat leave and go back to work?
Beginning of May. I had 6 months of maternity leave before returning.
Okay. And I know when you were looking at GitHub, I remember you talking about benefits were important because, in your life plan, you're like, I know I want to start a family soon. And now, having just come back from mat leave, what do you think is the most important thing that you've had that's been super positive? And then also, what would you tell people to be on the lookout for if they're in a similar situation?
I think one thing that's super positive is I like having the balance between work and being with my son. I feel like the days are really packed and I really try to make the most out of every moment that I'm working and the most out of every moment that I'm with him. And the days are truly so chaotic sometimes. You're up during the night. As soon as he wakes up, you're go, go, go. And I was an athlete. I want to exercise every day. So that needs to be done before he wakes up. And then you're in meetings starting at the time work starts until the time work ends. And then your baby needs you again. So you're not off the clock until they are ready for bed, which could be like 8 p.m. And then, you know, you have to hope to be done by with work and hope to have eaten somehow during that. So I really like how chaotic it is. There's definitely moments that are really stressful about it, but I like having both in my life. I really like being a working mom so far.
Yeah.
I think one thing to look out for though is there is an element of balance that you need to try to bring in as best you can. I would just warn people not to try to be 110% as soon as you go back to work. Like you're a new person when you become a parent, and you
Yeah.
have to make sure to figure out who that new person is at work as well.
That makes total sense. I feel like, do you have a different like mindset around like taking advantage of every moment? So it's almost like, okay, this is most important to me. Maybe like your phone goes off because you get a ping, but you're with James. You're like, that can wait because like this is the time I'm spending with James now.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And I feel like the weight of work and the weight and the enormity of, a project or a mistake is just so different now because something that's so much more important. And I don't know if every parent feels like that, but at least for my husband Ranjan and I, we both feel like we were meant to be parents, and that is our purpose right now. And these are the few years that we get with him. So we need to make sure to be the best parents possible. Like, at least for our jobs, like we're not in healthcare, like no one's
No,
gonna.
yeah. It's not life or death.
I feel like a lot of people in tech say that, and now I finally take that one to heart. But yeah, I feel like there's a bit of a weight off my shoulder of how serious I used to take work.
I could totally see that. Where, so I used to think this was a much bigger deal, but I realized like there's more important things and life will go on type of a thing.
Definitely. And I feel like it being a parent, one other really good piece of advice that I've gotten has been there are different chapters and phases of your life as there are in your career. And sometimes, like in this chapter in my life, this job is perfect for me. It's more stable. The projects are longer, they're more strategic. And so I would also encourage people to try to balance that as best you can as well. One of the those that I worked with always talked about work-life harmony, and he would talk to his wife at times and say, like, this next year is going to be, really heavily focused on work. And they would sort of have that agreement so that as a couple, you can be 100%, but sometimes someone needs to be 70% on work. Someone needs
Yeah,
70% on the kids. And so that's been something really interesting that I've never experienced as well, but it does really make sense now.
I like that work-life harmony. That's nice. Okay, last question. So, what is one piece of advice you were given when you first started out that has always stuck with you? And then what's one piece of advice you would give to others right now, like at work or just in life?
I always got the advice to network, and something that I started doing when I was in college, trying to find my first job, something I did in my first job to find my second job, and it's something I did in one role to get to the next role. I think that's something that's really helped me propel in my career and find the things that I really enjoy. And I can confidently say right now, I'm at a company I really love. I'm in a job that I really love. And I wouldn't be here if I didn't ask other people about their experiences, ask them for help, offer my help as well. I think networking can be really daunting at times, especially if you're in college. But the worst someone can say is no, that they don't have time, but so many people are there to help and guide you and give you advice and answer your questions. And so that would be the advice I have. Go out and network.
Yeah, you are good at networking, though. I love a good network. Love a good yap yap. Okay. Well, thank you, Jen, so much. I loved everything we talked about, so I appreciate you.